I wasn't here for the last reading. I was at this godforsaken board meeting, so I'm not quite sure where it ended. So I'm going to start. At one time, Swamiji told his brother disciple. Does that sound right to you guys? All right, well, I'm going to start there. I mean, you don't lose anything, right? Okay. At one time, Swamiji had told his brother disciple, and that would be Swami Premananda, Sri Ramakrishna's great disciple, "You must preach in East Bengal," and that is now Bangladesh. "You will flood the entire country with your love." It was perhaps in partial obedience to this urging that Premananda undertook a tour of both East and West Bengal during the years 1914 to 1916. Just prior to that, he had left for Varanasi. He hoped to convince Swami Brahmananda to return to the Belur Math monastery, which sorely missed his spiritual presence. But despite his entreaties, Maharaj was firm in his desire to stay in Varanasi. He said, "I do not wish to leave the city of Lord Shiva," Maharaj said with finality. "But Maharaj, Swamiji is our Lord Shiva, and he resides at Belur," Swami Premananda said. Maharaj remained silent. Then Premananda suddenly prostrated himself flat before his brother disciple. Maharaj immediately became excited and said, brother, what are you doing? Get up, get up." But Premananda remained firm. "I will not. Not until you agree to return to the Belur monastery." Nothing like blackmail. The love and humility of Baburam had conquered again, and Maharaj smiled. "Rise, brother, rise. I will come back." It was during this trip, while the Swami was traveling in Varanasi, that an incident of a most remarkable nature occurred. Swami Prabhavananda describes it thus, and most of you know, but Swami Prabhavananda was the founder of the Vedanta Society of Southern California, and a tremendous, great saint that some of us were fortunate to spend time with. It was in Varanasi in October of 1914. While staying there, Swami Premananda used to visit the temple of Vishwanath and Mother Annapurna after taking his bath in the Ganges. I would accompany him. One day, after we finished worship in the temple of Annapurna, and that literally means full of food, it's the Divine Mother in her aspect of just being giving food, you know, a typical, very motherly mother who wants to feed her children. After taking his bath in Ganges, I would accompany him. One day, after we finished worship in the temple of Annapurna, the head priest placed a garland of marigolds around Swami Premananda's neck. When the Swami was about to take the garland off to give it to me, I placed my palms together, bowed before him, and said, "No, holy sir, please keep the garland yourself. You look so beautiful." The word beautiful reminded the Swami of God's beauty, and he went into ecstasy. His face flushed, and then a light began to emanate from his whole body. Walking slowly, he left the temple, and I followed him. The temple lane was crowded as usual, but on either side, people stared at the Swami and made way. It was quite evident that everybody present saw him illumined. We continued to walk through the streets of Varanasi while crowds stood still, silently watching Swami Premananda. He was completely absorbed in the thought of God and oblivious of his surroundings. As we approached the outer gate of our monastery, Swami Nirbharananda, the abbot, saw us from the veranda. He immediately ordered the monks to prepare a special welcome for Swami Premananda. We entered the monastery grounds to the sound of gongs and conch shells and the ringing of bells. Then, when we arrived at the veranda, Swami Premananda took the garland off and placed it around the neck of the abbot. For a brief moment, he danced in ecstatic joy. Gradually, the ecstasy abated, and the divine light disappeared. Can you imagine seeing something like that, how transformative that would be? It's like you see that, it's like, I know this is real. I know this is real. I've seen it. I have seen it. The Swami finally embarked on his tour. Despite his quiet and self-effacing nature, Premananda was immensely popular. Crowds of people hungry for spiritual food literally followed the Swami everywhere he went. And from morning till night, visitors eagerly sought his counsel and blessing. Many years earlier, Sri Ramakrishna had emphasized to a devotee that before a person can teach spiritual truths, he must receive the command of God. At the same time, God gives him the power to teach. The task of a religious teacher, Sri Ramakrishna said, is indeed difficult. One cannot teach men without a direct command from God. People won't listen to you if you teach without such authority. Such teaching has no force behind it. One must first of all attain God through spiritual discipline or some other means. Thus, armed with the authority from God, one can deliver lectures. When we consider the overwhelming response the Swami evoked in those who sought his presence, we cannot doubt that he had received his command. In 1915, he went to Dhaka in East Bengal. Now, this book is so old it says East Pakistan, it's Bangladesh, at the invitation of a group of devotees. Finding among them a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, the devotees of the Master felt joyful and happy. Even Muslims joined the Hindus in their enthusiasm. "Do you think he belongs only to the Hindus?" a group of them said. "He's also our prophet." Premananda was immensely pleased to see Sri Ramakrishna so widely worshipped in East Bengal. He lectured everywhere and wherever he was asked. But shortly after he returned to Calcutta, he was struck by cholera, and little hope remained that he would live. He was unconscious for several days. Then one morning he opened his eyes, and seeing about him the sad, downcast eyes of the devotees and monks, he said with a smile, "Do not be afraid. I will not die yet, for my mother is still alive." Very few knew at that time that when Ramakrishna had asked Premananda's mother to give him her boy, she had agreed, but with a condition. "Father, I beg of you," she said, "in return for my son, give me devotion to the Lord, and may I never suffer grief at the death of any of my children." Sri Ramakrishna agreed to the woman's request, and Premananda reminded his devotees of that boon. Although Premananda recovered, this travel had weakened him, and on a subsequent trip he contracted a deadly fever known as Kala Azar. Actually, that's what Holy Mother got, and that's actually what she died of. It was absolutely fatal. He was forced to return to Belur. The physicians who examined him immediately recommended that he be sent to Deogar in nearby Bihar to recover. While he was staying there at the home of a devotee, a barber, who had come to the house for work, he was caught thieving. The host was about to turn the man over to the police when Premananda intervened. Swami Premananda said, "Hunger has driven this poor fellow into such dishonesty," he said. He gave the man a rupee and his own bathing towel and sent him away with his blessings. During the next year and a half, the Swami remained in the grip of the disease. Then, when apparently beginning a slow recovery, he contracted influenza. He was brought to Calcutta, and despite the efforts of all the attending doctors, the Swami succumbed on July 30th, 1918, after entering Mahasamadhi in the presence of his brother disciples. Swami Premananda once wrote to a devotee, "Let the Lord be ever seated within your heart and silently work as an instrument in his hands." The Swami was a mirror of his own teaching. His utter selflessness and love of God in every being never left him, even during his final days. Shortly before his death, he called a young monk to his bedside. He said, "Can you do one thing for me?" he asked the young woman. "Yes," the young man. "Anything, sir," he replied. "Will you serve the devotees?" The monk nodded. "Don't forget," Swami Premananda entreated. A Swami of the order who was closely associated with Swami Premananda for some time as a young brahmachari remembers him thus. A marble floor in the temple of Vishwanath, that's in Varanasi, is always wet with water. I used to walk behind Swami Premananda to touch to my heart the muddy marks left by his footprints. When you have a vision of God, then you will understand what it is like to be in the presence of a God-man, like Swami Premananda. And that is his biography. Does anyone want to ask any questions or have any remarks about that? Any observations? Okay. I see Shobha has joined us. That's very nice. Okay, well then I'll move into the teachings.
I think Ganga has a question.
Ganga.
Yeah.
Oh, Ganga. Yes, I see. Ganga.
Hi, can you
Hi.
hear me okay?
I can beautifully.
Awesome. Yeah, so I was just really curious. They mentioned Swami Premananda going to teach in East Bengal.
Yes.
Do we have any other stories like connecting this tradition to Islam, beyond the very popular ones?
Well, our mission is still very active in Dhaka, and we do have some other missions there in Bangladesh. The problem is that Bangladesh itself has become quite radicalized by the mullahs who are sent there generally come from Saudi Arabia, and they tend to be Wahhabi and tend to be very dogmatic and will not tolerate Hinduism. Hopefully that will change, because before that it's always been a nice gathering. I remember our Swami from Dhaka came here to visit probably 15, 20 years ago, and he brought with him the vice president, the vice chancellor of a university, a woman who is absolutely devoted to Sri Ramakrishna, absolutely devoted to the Swami, a disciple of the Swami, and a Muslim woman. And there were plenty of Muslim devotees who loved to come there and didn't feel like, that was 20 years ago, that there was any sort of a barrier. The Dhaka mission, and Dhaka, of course, is the capital of Bangladesh, is well known for its service, for feeding the poor, and also for its medical help, which they're very active, and so they're given a lot of respect because of it. A number of the outlying smaller centers in Bangladesh have suffered very badly. Several of them were burned down to the ground, and the monks were threatened with death. So I hope it gets better soon. A dear friend of mine, a Bangladeshi, grew up there, of course, and with his family, and the family he was tutoring a boy who was a Muslim. Didn't bother him that he was a Muslim, and he always was a very nice boy. And the boy and his brothers tried to kill him one night, and so the whole family escaped that night. He was able to run home, alert the family. They all left with just the clothes on their back. My friend Dr. Lala later became a world-renowned cancer researcher. And he went back to Bangladesh, to where he was in Chittagong. Went back, probably 10 years ago. And that boy who tried to kill him met him, fell at his feet, and begged forgiveness. And Dr. Lala said, "Why did you do that? Why did you do that? I was tutoring you in mathematics. Why did you do that?" And he said, "Well, they said that you were going to do this to us. They said that you were going to kill us. They said that." So it became sort of this mania that had overtaken everybody. And then he was asked by the government to please come back to Bangladesh and do his research there. And Dr. Lala was actually he really, really was so moved, because he would love to go back to his motherland. But it was like, the reality is like, no, he had a big lab going in Canada. And he also knew things can change in a heartbeat in a place like Bangladesh. So that is what I know. But Bangladesh generally has been much more about being Bengali than being a Muslim, much more into the Bengali identity than on your religious identity. But I think that has changed with the number of Wahhabi preachers going in there that have really taught something very different from what the Prophet Muhammad taught. Anyway, that's what I know. I think about that a lot, because when you have someone like Swami Premananda giving his teachings there, and you have someone like Swami Vivekananda who tells him, go to East Bengal, that means that there is a seed there that will have to take effect, that will have to have its effect. So let us hope it's within our lifetime. All right. So now let's move on to his teachings. Although Swami Premananda did not initiate any disciples, he gave much spiritual instruction in the form of letters. To the numerous monks and devotees who sought his counsel, he wrote words of courage, wisdom, and love. Always his words reminded them of their divine inheritance, urging them onward toward the final goal of God realization. His letter writing extended over a 17-year period, from 1902, which was the year that Swami Vivekananda died, to 1918, the year of his passing away. The letters begin. Remain some days in Jairamati with the Holy Mother. Serve her, thereby be blessed, and realize the object of human life. This is my earnest wish. With what patience, forgiveness, and forbearance does she lead her life at home? Never before has such an ideal life been visible in this world. If such an example does not result in your remolding your life, then there is no hope for you. That's strong. But then again, this is someone in Jairamati living with Holy Mother, who was like Divine Mother incarnate on earth. So I think, Swami Premananda's words will have their effect too. There is, if such an example does not result in your remolding your life, then there is no hope for you. Seeing the Holy Mother is equivalent to seeing Sri Ramakrishna. In fact, we've had any number of Swamis say they're simply two sides of the same coin. There's no difference. Two sides of the same coin. Only in her native village can we perceive the Holy Mother's real nature, what substance she has. You will learn how large-hearted and loving she is. Seeing her makes egotism and conceit fly away. Try to learn thoroughly her ways and manners. She has infinite compassion for all mankind. We should become full if we were able to get but a particle of that compassion. I think this is a separate letter. Brahmacharya, that is the practice of, that means actually living in Brahman, which is practicing continence of complete celibacy in thought, word, and deed. Living the life of a studious life, reading the scriptures, leading a very serious, regulated life. Brahmacharya means performing the ritualistic worship, doing japa, that's repeating the name of the Lord or the mantra, meditating and studying with faith and reverence. Austerity means making the lips correspond with the heart. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, mon mukh ak. The heart and the mouth should be one. No discrepancy. No discrepancy between what the heart feels and what the lips say. That it's a beautiful description of austerity. Does this state consist of only uttering a few mantras, that is, the brahmacharya? Does this state consist only in uttering a few mantras while taking the vows of brahmacharya in a formal way? X has asked whether the picture of Sri Krishna can be kept in the shrine of Sri Ramakrishna. Pictures of all gods and goddesses of all religion can be kept there. Sri Ramakrishna was a great leader in all sects of all religions. Do not see the defects of one another. See the good, the merits only. As Sri Ramakrishna said, be like a winnowing basket that retains only the good grain while rejecting the chaff. Not like a sieve that lets the good material drop through and holds back what is worthless. We should move about freely, seeing the world as the manifestation of Rama. To hate and to injure anyone is to hate and injure Rama. And of course, Rama is the divine incarnation, Sri Ramachandra. And Rama pervades the whole world. My desire is to establish in every village and town the worship of Sri Ramakrishna. Through his name, may the whole world awaken. May the divinity within all be manifested through the power of that name. Work hard. Exert yourself. Better to die while doing this work. Never be lazy. Here's another letter. Do not agitate yourself, dreaming up all sorts of projects. The Lord does his own work. You be the instrument. If the idea that I am the doer gets hold of a person, it will be the cause of bondage, and no permanent good ever comes to one out of such deeds. Take refuge in Sri Ramakrishna, with your words, your deeds, and thoughts, and all will be well. Another letter. The young men of East Bengal are very enthusiastic about Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. May more enthusiasm come. May indomitable energy grow. May the whole country be engulfed in a flood of love. May the flood of love come submerging Hindus, Muslims, and Christians, big and little. May Europe, America, and all other communities, forgetting envy and jealousy, feel the strong current of love and intense devotion to one God, the Lord of all. Scientific knowledge is certainly not able to provide bliss and peace. To point out the path to peace, Sri Ramakrishna came in the guise of an illiterate man. He manifested himself to destroy the vain conceit of learned scholars. Be guileless. Make the lips correspond to the heart, and thus sincerely think of him. You must make your lives blessed by realizing God in this very life. Chant his name, and you will feel infinite power. Let steadfastness grow in you. Believe that infinite power is in you. I pray to the Lord that he may bless you with real greatness and large-mindedness. Oh, isn't this beautiful? It is so beautiful. It just makes your heart soar. Another letter. If a pitcher has a hole in the bottom, water poured into it will flow out. No water can be kept in it. The holes in a spiritual aspirant are worldly cravings. The materials by which the holes can be repaired and kept closed are hearing the truth of God, meditating on him, chanting his name, reading sacred books, ritual worship, prayer, and so on. At every step, you will be tested. Be careful, very careful. Holy Mother used to say this quite often. She used to always say, you must be very careful. What we say in anger or out of frustration can really do some damage. It not only makes an impression in our mind, which we can easily repeat, it makes an impression and can wound others, and that cannot be repaired. It makes for very bad karma for us. So she used to emphasize, always be careful. It is so easy out of sheer thoughtlessness or frustration or just simple unthinking to make a mistake that cannot be repaired. You know, we usually when we hear about Mother, it's like, oh, don't see the faults in others, compassion, which is very true, but we forget the part, be careful, be careful. It's so easy to make a misstep. Think before we act. Before we think, is it kind, is it helpful, is it wise? Well, is it constructive? Is it going to be, will it serve a greater good, or am I just blowing off steam? If we're blowing off steam, learn how to undo the knots yourself and say your mantra. Say the name of God. Sing a bhajan. Sing to the Lord. Don't do it and inflict pain on others and do real harm to ourselves too. The world is a world of relativity. Do not be unnerved in the least by pleasure and pain. That's tough. He said, repeatedly convince yourself of the truth that change is a condition, that a change of condition is the will of God, and everything occurs for our good. Believe that any good that is done by you is by God's power and that you are mere instruments in his hands. Don't think of the work that you do as any task at all. Try to do it in an unselfish way, not seeking further results. And that's always the hard part. We do something, but we want someone to notice it, someone to say, oh my God, that looks so much better, or How come he's not praising this thing I spent all day making? That sort of thing. We always want some sort of results. And the hardest thing is just, it's like when you give a present to someone, you don't keep hanging on to it. No, you hand it off, you let it go, over. You don't keep a string around your wrist. That will break, not seeking the results, will break bondage. The self-same medicine will give different results according to the type of ingredients taken with it. Thus, work in one sense is a bondage, yet, if it can be done in a detached way, in a spirit of dedication to God, that same work will give you devotion and liberation. Confusion will arise and bondage will result if you keep your eye on name, fame, or some other worldly objective. Tell X to consider his work as being equivalent to practicing austerities, worshiping God with singing, going on pilgrimages, and fasting. I see that when he tries to sit in meditation, he only falls asleep. Is that any good? Is it not better to devote his whole life to performing deeds as service to God? On the other hand, to feel that one has to do too much, to overwork, that is not good. Very important point. The golden mean. You don't want to overdo, you don't want to underdo. You just want to do what is appropriate for the time. Don't kill yourself because that causes an overreaction. Don't underdo because it's being lazy is a bad habit. Don't overthink. Just do what is apportioned for the time. It's very hard to get to what the Buddha called the middle path, but Krishna talks about it in the Bhagavad Gita too, that it's like yoga is not for the one who eats too much, who eats too little, not for him who sleeps too much or sleeps too little. For him to you have to keep right in the middle, because we're in it for the long game. It's not the short. It's not the sprint. It's for the 100-mile race. Pay some attention to the body. Regularity in bathing, eating, and so on is desirable. It is necessary to be regular about sleep. Work should be done smoothly through love. Hard and fast rules are not good. Let affection be your watchword. Young men will be moved by affection. They will give their hearts and their lives in return. He's speaking here to a monk, so he's talking about the young monks coming to the monastery. But that really works for everybody. I have learned through reflection that if boys of the monastery do any wrong, it is not their fault. All the fault is mine. If you want things to go well, try to reform yourself. Always keep watch on your own character and behavior. Sri Ramakrishna taught us that if we see any defect in others, it's only our own defect. In other words, if we see it in somebody else, it's because we recognize it, because we see it in ourselves. As Swamiji said, a baby doesn't see a thief. If a thief walks into a room and steals diamonds, the baby just goes, meh, meh, nah, nah. Only a person who understands stealing can see a thief. If you want to become great, see others as great. Young men, take note. Let the life of Sri Ramakrishna be your ideal. Follow in his footsteps and know for certain that thus you will be imbued with new strength and vigor. He, Sri Ramakrishna, is the embodiment and source of all power. And that is the end of that section, and it's the end of our reading. Any comments or questions on this? There's some very juicy things in there.
We have a question from online.
Okay.
Clive Johnson is the author of the introduction.
Yes.
Does he have a spiritual name?
Yes, Bhuma. You remember Bhuma, Sunanda?
Yes.
Yes. I think he definitely left before he had his final vows, but he stayed at the Hollywood Monastery for many years. He was in Trabuco for many years. He was a devotee till the very end. In fact, when our car broke down in Hollywood, it managed to break down at the Toyota Center in North Hollywood, and who would walk in to the Toyota dealer but Bhuma, who said, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" And he said, "Do you want to go to the center?" It's like, yes. So while they fixed the car, Bhuma took us to the center, and Holy Mother spared us from having our Toyota die in the middle of the Mojave Desert, which would have happened had that not happened there. Seriously, we were on our way to see one of our former Sunday school kids who was dying of cancer. So, yeah. Thank you, Holy Mother, and thank you, Booma, for being the instrument. Yes. Shoba. What's up, Shoba?
What is the deed and actions that is mentioned here that we can do for God?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the first part. What is the...
Deed and actions that is
No,
mentioned
deeds and
here.
actions. Yes, well,
Yeah.
I think what he was talking about here would be like service to those who are, they were talking very directly about service to patients or service to people they were feeding, the poor. Our deeds are what comes up with us with our own dharma. My dharma is to do cleaning, cooking, work in the temple and the shrine, maybe bookstore work, but whatever, the Lord places us in a certain position in life. And wherever we are, that is where we're supposed to be, and that is our dharma. So whatever our dharma is to do that with our wholehearted mind and strength, knowing that no matter what it is our work for the divine. It's work for God. The Lord, Thakur and Mother have put us in that exact place for our spiritual growth. And what our duties are, whatever they may be, whether it's cutting vegetables or calling friends to see if they're okay, or checking on your children, or just, your online work, whatever it may be, whether you're an accountant or whether you are retired, or whether you're doing work for whatever your volunteer work may be, whether it's sweeping the path or vacuuming the house, all that is service to the Lord. And if we can remember that, and I'm sweeping this path because Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother are going to walk down this path. I'm cleaning this so that this will be nice for Sri Ramakrishna. I don't want him coming into a house with food on the floor. Oh, God, don't put your foot in that zucchini that I just dropped down there. It's like, so that whatever we do, that it becomes very centered on the divine, however Sri Ramakrishna has placed us. There was a wonderful 17th century French saint that I really loved. His name was François Fenelon. And he was a very simple, austere, learned monk who was brimming with love for God. As his karma would be, Louis XIV had discovered him, and he decided that he ought to be the tutor for his son, Louis XV, who was a spoiled, vicious brat, and was continually threatening him with death at the guillotine because, he was trying to teach him. And Fenelon said, I am put here because this is where the Lord has placed me. The Lord has put me here, and it was just like a man who loved solitude, a man who loved to have his life in prayer, a man who loved to just be with his monastic brothers and chanting the Psalms. And there he was in this court of Louis XIV with nothing but palace intrigue and nastiness and continual, people stabbing each other in the back, including him. It's like, the Lord has placed me here, and this is where I must be. The Lord has put me here because this is where I must be for my greatest spiritual benefit. So if we can even try to have a little bit of that, it helps us a lot. It helps us a lot because nothing is an accident in this planet. Nothing is an accident.
Thank you very much. You have explained it really well for me to understand. Thank you very much.
So we've got some announcements. We have, on Saturday, there'll be a reading of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna at 5 p.m. We are so lucky that this Sunday we have Swami Shivarchanananda, who is our assistant Swami in St. Louis. He will be speaking on a message from the Divine Mother. I was fortunate enough to meet him in St. Louis in November. He is a sweetheart. He is absolutely perfect to follow up in the footsteps of Swami Chaitananda. And you all know Swami Chaitananda writes these gorgeous books on Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother. He's a devotional attitude, a very modest, sweet monk. I was really impressed with them. And the great thing is that the other monks there, like the American, tough old monks, they say, "Oh God, we're so lucky to have this guy." So I think we'll all be happy to see that. And then next week we'll have again another reading from Swami Premananda, Teachings and Reminiscences. Oh, Memories of a Loving Soul, Swami Premananda. Okay, now let us chant. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah, really glad to see you all there. Okay, Jai Ma, Jai Ma.
Bye, Ma.